Oh, thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for hanging in there. I know you guys have been waiting all day to, be a part of every part of this presentation today. So I'm going to just go down the line and have everyone introduce themselves, and then we'll go from there. Your name and your company.
Hi, my name is Yves Dicat. I'm a founder and CEO of a company called Biolingus, and we do oral drug delivery of peptides, proteins, and vaccines.
Hi guys, I'm Devaki and I do data transparency within clinical trials. I work within the drug development industry and I've had various experience in other areas as well. So I'm really glad to be here and so honored to be surrounded by all you great people.
Hi, it's actually great to see you, in person because we connected online before. My name is Olga, I'm from Slovakia, so I have a little bit of jet lag, sorry for that. I'm co-CEO of AI Dental, or AID, because we are moving beyond dentistry as well, and I'm also co-founder and CEO of Next Generation Healthcare Alliance in Europe.
Hello everyone, I'm Ishwar Iyer. I'm the co-founder and CEO of an AI and biotechnology company called IKEM. We try to make new medicines with ChatGPT-like AI. So the goal is to make cheaper, faster, better medicines for diseases where there's not enough access to medicines. So pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our panel discussion, one of the most pressing dilemmas at the intersection of healthcare and intellectual property, the tension between patient and access to medicine. At the heart of this issue lies a fundamental conflict. On one side, patients are crucial for incentivizing innovation. So we need to start incentivizing some innovation there, I guess. They provide pharmaceutical companies and biotech firms with the exclusive rights to profit from their interventions, thereby motivating the substantial investment required to research and develop new drugs, with the promise of patents, many of the groundbreaking therapies and medical technologies we have today might not exist. On the other side of this equation is access. Patents can lead to high prices for new drugs, potentially putting them out of reach for many patients, particularly in low and middle income countries. This exclusivity can delay the entry of more affordable generic alternatives into the market and exacerbating global health disparities. This tension raises critical questions. How can we balance the need for companies to recoup their investments and fund future innovations with the ethical imperative to ensure that all patients, regardless of income status, have access to life-saving treatments? Throughout today's discussion, we will explore potential strategies to navigate this complex landscape, such as alternative intellectual properties models, international policy reforms, and innovative pricing and licensing agreements that aim to enhance drug accessibility while still promoting robust drug development. We look forward to this dynamic and insightful conversation today that tackles these challenges from multiple perspectives. So let's get started today, you guys. Thank you. So we have a few questions. I want to get started today. The first question that I have, and whichever one of you guys feel that you best can answer this question, you let me know. But how can we strike balance between protecting intellectual properties through patents? So how can we strike a balance between protecting intellectual properties through patents while ensuring life-saving medicines remain accessible and affordable to patients globally? It's a patients globally. So how can we do that? It's a very complex balance between the two. So here we have the patents, and then we also have the fact that we need to get those things delivered to the patient in a way, in a manageable way, and in an affordable way, because as we all well know, patents are quite expensive. People who work in the field of science and medicine are quite expensive. However, we still need to be able to actually get this to the patient. So I want to kind of go ahead and ask, can you go ahead and answer that for us today? Can you start the discussion?
Sure. Happy to give perspective, but so at a high level, the question is how do you balance between, innovating and sort of protecting the innovation and giving more access to better medicines, is that right? So at a high level, the way the industry works is companies, small startups, they discover new medicines. The process average takes about 10 years and maybe $2 billion for it to get to the market. So patents, in some ways, come in that where it protects, at least prevents others from following that invention and gives some exclusivity to the person who's invented it, enabling investments to pour in, and as a result, you can make medicines. But as a result, naturally, the medicines become expensive because they've taken as much time and money to be made. So I think in the new age of sort of technologies, you expect that with the new innovations making drug discovery process cheaper, faster, better, that's probably one of the ways you can make the innovation more accessible. You can also try making the lifespan of the patent from, 10 or 12 years to shorter, but there is a risk. A company that's investing in it may not have time to reap the benefits out of it. So it's a fine balance that you have to reap. I have filed many patents in the past and have sort of experience in this. For certain things, patents are important for bringing that investment, but for certain things, it stifles others from practicing it. For example, generics are a great example. Once the patents expire, many companies come and make generics, which then bring the price significantly lower and so on. So that's my thought. I don't know. You're also in the same in the same space.
I can add to that a bit. I mean, what we're discussing here is one of the biggest problems we have in the pharmaceutical industry. And so it's a simple question, but very hard to answer, and no one actually succeeded in answering that very clearly. But what I want to emphasize is indeed patents are necessary. So I lead a small company. When I want to have funding from VCs, one of the key questions they will ask is, what's your patent situation? When will they expire? What's the protection in different countries and so on? So it's absolutely necessary, and without that you can't survive. So how can we solve that? Actually, I think a bit a pessimistic look. For me, what we're discussing, let's say the tension between patents and patients, it's like the Grand Canyon of the pharmaceutical industry. What is bad about it, the canyon is getting wider and deeper all the time. There are forces driving that in the wrong direction. We can discuss that a bit further, but on one hand, regulatory requirements are getting more difficult, clinical studies are getting more complex. So these things. So how can we solve that? I do believe that the solution lies in technology. With technology, we can build a bridge over the canyon, actually, in many ways. I will give an example from my own company. So we develop drug delivery systems. For instance, for COVID vaccines, normally you all had your COVID shots, I assume, or most of you. So we can develop a small pill which you put under the tongue, so you don't need the injection anymore. We actually developed the system together with the funding from the Bill Gates Foundation, so that's an example of a public-private partnership, actually. What's the advantage of that? Well, a pill is much cheaper, much more affordable than an injectable. Second thing is, if you have an injectable for a vaccine or insulin or whatever, you need a cold chain. So it's hard to reach remote areas in the world. If you have a pill, you don't need the cold chain. So access is much more easy. So this is an example how technology can help to close the gap, actually. But there are many other examples, and I think we can discuss that about potential solutions. So I don't believe there's one solution, but we have to have a multiple of solutions to bridge this gap, actually. So I let the word now to my neighbor.
Thank you so
Yes.
much, Eve. Just to clarify on that point, I completely agree, and because patients are at the forefront of what we're trying to, our primary goals, so we need to create better systems for access to these medicines and to also expand on health literacy as well, which was touched upon in an earlier panel discussion, which was really great, and I see some potential areas for collaboration there. I know Olga specializes in AI technology, and I think you've got some really great points to share as well.
Thank you. Well, I have been in pharma for some time, but now I switched to software as the medical device. It's a term for developing a medical device which is in the shape of the software, which is directly integrated into the clinical practice for diagnostical or some other purposes. But in my times, because I can talk about the patents in medtech, but here we are mainly talking about patents in life sciences and biotech. Well, in pharma, it's usually like you're planning your business runway based on your portfolio of patents. So basically, you have to look forward for 5 to 20 years and plan your market penetration based on how long you will have the patents. But I think what might help us is to support the systems how to differentiate or to help smaller companies which are developing some innovation, whether it's in biotech or medtech, to hold the position or to penetrate the market and not be driven only by corporations which are then holding, as per my recent research, up to 97% of the patents. So that would be my takeaway here, to somehow shape the systems, somehow is a broad term still, to allow more smaller companies to penetrate market when it comes to the innovative solutions. And we are not there yet in terms of legislation and in terms of the regulation systems.
I'd like to see if you'd like to pick up where she just left off. And
Yes, sure. Make sure this is okay. Is it on? Hello? I got a dud. No?
Yeah.
Winner. Okay. Sorry, I came from one panel, rushed to the next. Thank you for allowing me to join. And I want to touch on the patient access, right? A lot of, big pharma controls a lot, and it's revenue driven, and a lot of great products are not accessible to the majority because of cost, or it's new on the market, or it's now addictive, and so on and so forth, right? Always coming out with more and more and more. I am a big fan of reaching out to the smaller, right, newer companies that are going to look at innovative ways to be more holistic in their approach, innovative and less, I call it farmy, and be person-centered. There has to be a big shift because I'm a patient advocate. I run a recovery wellness center, and so many individuals come to me because they are addicted to one pill or the next, or this substance or the next, or they got really sick, right? They're in liver failure because not just because of the substance, but because of medications they were taking alongside. I do a lot of research on the new upcoming, more the devices and such, and they're working on their patents. And I'm one of their biggest cheerleaders because I want to see people be able to get off of opiates. I want to see this new change, right? All the ancient wisdom that went out the door many, many moons ago because of this new pill that came out that's a quicker fix or this and that, right? We need to start incorporating that more in the forefront and seeing a real change and making it accessible to everyone. We are all recovering from something, right? And we all deserve wellness. And I think that this new technology and new innovative ways
devices that are working so hard to get funding or, get patented just to prove themselves so people can really look into it. Because if you don't have a patent or if your name's not up here, then it must be no good. So I'm a huge advocate in working on that, but making it accessible to everyone because we need to get well. So
That is amazing because I was just thinking, did you want to say something? Go right ahead.
I don't want to interrupt, sorry.
Okay, well, I was going to kind of piggyback on what she was talking about as far as access, being that I am a licensed clinical social worker and I do work in the greater Los Angeles area. That's where I started anyway. I've expanded from there, but I do tend to work with patients that they know that there's Medi-Cal out there, they know that there's Medicare, they know that there's those different resources out there. They even know that there's therapy because if you go on social media, most of the time you're going to see a lot of, information about mental health. People are posting constantly about that topic. It's a very interesting topic, and drugs and things like that. As soon as they come out, a lot of people are posting about those kind of things, but they still don't know how to make that transition from the knowledge to the actual, sitting in front of the therapist or sitting in front of the clinical person that they need to get that service from. And so kind of what we were talking about on one of the earlier panels today, well, actually I was doing a keynote on one of the panels, and one of the things that I was talking about, one of my topic was about the apps and about using apps and about using AI. And that was what my topic was for today. And I kind of want to spin off on that a little bit and say, using apps, a lot of the times, most people know and understand apps because we have so many these days. And I think that's a really great tool. And I wanted to see if any of my other panel people, what have they learned about that, being as they're more on the tech field and I'm more in the service part of the industry. Did you want to say something, Olga? Or was it something else?
I just wanted to comment a bit on the earlier phrase or speech. Actually, as part of our competitors' landscape scanning, we identified one company which developed the patented innovation in the diagnostics and AI and was purchased by the large corporation, and that corporation killed that smaller company just in order to maintain the position on the market, which is it's a life, we understand, but that's also how we got to discover deeper how sometimes the innovative solutions are actually not getting to the patients at the end of the day because sometimes they're just getting killed by bigger companies, which is, of course, how the business operates so far. Yes.
No, I liked something that you said, Heather, which was, kind of threw away a lot of the old time-tested medicines out of the window. I think there's currently, I speak as a scientist, as a technologist, as someone who's sort of pursuing medicine with AI. I think it is true that, there's, millennia of wisdom. Sometimes there's a bias of immediacy bias where we think that we are the smartest that have been there, and then this is basically the most, useful. We have gone deeper into certain things, but certain facts about, certain medicines are there that sort of have been shown to be useful. I mean, the common things, whether it's Chinese or Indian medicine, or go to any of these, traditional, ancient sort of cultures, there's always some wisdom hidden there, and maybe there's false positives there and so on. But dismissing it is probably not the right thing. But on the other side, for a company to take that and do something with it, they need to, again, have investment and they need to have a patent. And that drives the need for sort of either isolating two reasons. One is to make it more efficacious and more potent and also more specific to certain populations. There's a drive to make it better. So there's a need for sort of isolating the exact compound and productizing it. But that productization is important for driving innovation. That also takes away from that generic nature of things. I personally know of a hospital that treats a lot of things with these ancient medicines, often for free, and there's a lot of, but nobody has ever heard of this hospital. I've seen many people who have gotten sort of in my own family or others who have been sort of benefited from this, but that's the thing, because their incentive and the motive structures are different. They just do it for doing it. But if you're decided to be a company or corporation sort of trying to have this identity, once the investors come in, investors are in because clearly there are two things. Of course, they may be purposeful, but they put in X money and they need Y money out, and they need to have a clear line of sight. So that's kind of how the ecosystem, there's nothing evil in it, but it's just how the ecosystem churns. So just a small perspective.
Sure, thank you, thank you. Okay, I think we
And
can.
can
I
I
can
touch
maybe-
base on your
yeah,
question when you're talking about the apps, right? And the AI, and there's a lot of the wellness apps, and you can retrain your brain, and you can,
Absolutely.
there's so many different great modalities via the phone, but the phone sometimes is the problem too, right? But it's not forgetting the human connection. It is bringing a lot of the education and awareness and accessibility to all, and I think that it's there needs to be more, and I've seen more and more a beautiful blend between Eastern and Western medical modalities, because there's space for all, and teaching somebody grounding techniques,
Absolutely.
right?
That's what I was-
Teaching somebody sound healings, teaching them how to use these stress coping modalities, and
Absolutely.
even healing modalities alongside with doctors' prescriptions with
Yes.
any ailments, right? Because there's space for both. My mother-in-law passed away. Not yesterday. It sometimes feels like yesterday. Last year with cancer, and she did the regimen. She did the special research, right, at MD Anderson, but she was missing so much of the soul component and what she can do in between the treatments, and she lost herself. And then she lost the will to fight and to live anymore. And she would rather just say, I'm tired, I'm done, right? So I think that even though the research and the different, it was becoming accessible to her, but there was also that other component that was missing, right?
Absolutely. That's
And so incorporating that and making it more, I think talking about it more. I love that there's a hospital that specializes. I want to know about it. I want to, because I will send people there. I will go there myself. Like nobody knows about it because they don't have the big high dollar capital to shout from the rooftops, here I am, or the big shiny big logos that are everywhere, right? But they have incredible work and solutions, and they're healing, and more people need to know about it. So I think that having more people being bold and brave to talk about it and saying this is accessible and giving people the power of choice can go a long ways.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would
so-
like to add something to the use
Sure.
of apps also.
Okay.
I became an advisor to a company that developed an app for patient care in oncology. So if you're diagnosed with a type of cancer, it's really like a shock. The purpose of this company, it's actually a company from Singapore called Medicia AI, so they're specialized in this. And once you're diagnosed, they support the patient through the whole treatment, actually, in all aspects. Normally, what people will do, they will look on Google and so, but they may have misinformation. And this app is really made by doctors. It gives all the right information at the right time to the patient. Also, there's not one type of cancer, there are 100 types of cancer, so actually the selection of the therapy is very complicated. And that app also uses artificial intelligence to help with the therapies, but of course the decision is always with the doctors, not with the app. And it goes until survivorship, so that's a really a unique example where an app, I don't like to call it an app because an app sounds a bit too cheap to me, but where an IT system can help, which is made by doctors, but supported by the most, let's say, active artificial intelligence to give very good support to patients. And it's now already used by 30,000 patients in Singapore, actually.
Wow.
And we're rolling it out now also to United States. There's a study ongoing with the Mayo Clinic to implement it there, and I'm also helping it to introduce it in Europe. But that's where very sophisticated technology can help to bridge the gap by giving better treatments, which are more founded on data and so on.
Yeah, I really agree with that, and that's kind of the reason why I kind of focused on that, because I thought it was something simple, That's been a big deal. When I first started my clinical practice in California, I immediately said, what we were taught at USC was like, you got to get delivery of service. So if you do great services, it doesn't matter. A lot of these people are marginalized populations that are using these services, and they can't get to you. They have to catch the bus. I mean, this simple things like that as far as delivery. And so I got an office in Pasadena, I got an office in downtown Los Angeles, and then I got an office all the way out in the Antelope Valley. This is like, okay, 3 offices. If they have to catch the bus, they're going to get there. And no matter what, they're going to be able to get their treatment, because a lot of them have never had therapy. Therapy was typically something that the more affluent people were able to access, and so that was my whole idea. And so lately I realized that obviously we've moved over to teletherapy now. Teletherapy is really another major delivery service that has transformed healthcare, and I love it. I absolutely love it, and I advocate for it every chance that I can. And so that's great. But then there's some people that think, they're a little bit paranoid about that. I know about the marginalized populations because that's the population that I typically serve. And they'll tell me things like, someone is going to hear me, and that maybe they have a home. They're the Latino population. They may have 3 generations living in the same home with them. So how are they going to do teletherapy? Because someone's going to be listening to me, and I'm actually talking about them. So it's those simple type of things. And so I said, I thought the app would be something really good that they could take in their room or even in the bathroom or whatever. If they're having a panic attack, they can use the app to do some sort of coping method that can, remind them of the coping method. Obviously, I always tell my patients when they're sitting with me to, get some pen and paper. I'm going to tell you some things to do. We're always going to, I'm going to likely give you a little bit of homework. It's not going to be hard homework, but it's going to be a little homework for you and things like that. So I thought that the app would be something really cool that they could have, that they could download it on their phone. Most people have a smartphone or some sort of phone, and they can use it, or if they have a computer or something like that, and they can go on there and you can manage between their sessions. This is not to get rid of the therapy, because the therapist, hopefully they should be seeing their therapist at least twice a month, if not once a week. That's my recommendation to my clients. But yeah, I thought this be something to bring up, and hopefully, maybe we can continue this discussion even after this panel. So anything else that you want to say?
Yeah, I just want to say, to your point as well, these apps and information systems, they shouldn't replace that human element, but they're there to enhance what we already have. And it's also like fear of the unknown, that it just helps educate the general population a bit more. So I really like that discussion that it supports.
I just thought it was something, because we're talking about access, and like I said, that's always been my thing. Like from day one when I decided to open a clinical practice, I was like, I got to find a way to get this to them. I know I grew up in this kind of situation, and I know the biggest thing for us was transportation. We could not get from point A to point B. A lot of us didn't have cars back then. Now it was a little easier to get a car, but back then it wasn't. So, I thought, let's try to think of ways. We're could probably consider the great minds of the world. So why can't we do things that make things easier for people who may not have the education, or they may not have the access to the resources that we have? So I wanted to see if there's any more input on that, or did you move on? Mm-hmm.
Olga, did you want to go?
Yeah, just maybe a bit related to the patents. So we are also facing with the same questions, like what are we patenting, what are our IP strategy from investors and so on when we are fundraising, and we are fundraising now, as always. I think that's never-ending story. And we are now switching from the venture capitalist and grant schemes from the governments and so on to actually fundraising from our customers, because of course they are interested in the return on investment, but they directly understand the need, they directly understand the potential of the solution we are building, and they are not that much in need to see the actual patent on hands, because they want this solution to be integrated into their practice. So that's my kind of thinking so far, how we can not be so much focused on the patents and calculating the years we can be on the market with a patent.
That's a great point. In fact, I was going to add to that. I don't know, some of you or many of you may be tracking the latest situation. During COVID, there was a huge boom in biotech market, and then after that, there's a huge bust. So the biotech market, it's very hard to fund. So because venture capitalists have burnt a lot of money, and for them to show return on their funds, they need to perform better. So they're very risk averse. They want to take known entity and risk. So as a result, it's much harder to fund. On the other side, we also have from the government a lot of the funding that's getting cut from NIH and others, which have funded some of the blockbuster drugs, right? Mm-hmm. So that, while it's very negative, has a silver lining, which is it's going to focus people on collaborating more and perhaps focusing on fundraising from your customers or getting to a product sooner so you can start fundraising using that, making something, rather than waiting for the typical biotech scenario would be, okay, I have an idea, let's raise some money, and then after that you do series A, B, C, D, E, and then you take it public, and then it takes time. And even if you don't have a product, it might be public, and sort of it takes a while. But now with this pressure, now you have to get to a product sooner, faster, better. I think there's a silver lining, and all the hospitals and others are going to focus on collaborating with each other, from what I'm hearing in all the other meetings that I'm in, because it's hard for one entity to take care of all of these things. And so they're going to be more liberal with their revenue sharing and all the other IP, because they know that's almost survival. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a silver lining to all of this. On the other side of things, technologies like AI. Some of you may be familiar with DeepSeek R1. Raise your hands if you have heard of DeepSeek R1. Okay, some of you have. So ChatGPT, many of you have. So it took billions of dollars to get this, and then there's a Chinese version that did this in 6 million, maybe some more. The same kind of technological shifts are coming in biotech. Those who know. Those who are not aware, it's going to sort of be observable. But fundamentally, those generating high quality data, sharing data more freely with people, and sort of the licensing and so on. So what took much longer is going to take shorter. Now, this is going in a little more detail, but usually in a clinical trial, you have phase 1, you do the early discovery, and once you have a molecule, take it to phase 1 clinical trial, where you show safety, and then after that, phase 2, and so on, and then you bring it out. You have this advantage primarily till phase 1, because once you get to phase 1, then you have other regulatory people that take care of it. This is where the government has to come in. And that is a part. Doesn't matter whether it's $1 billion company or a small company with a few $1 million. They all have to be in the same queue for the regulation. So that's something that has to come from the government on improving the regulation, and then that accelerates the whole field of moving faster, keeping in mind the safety of people. So that people don't come up with snake oil, but at the same time make sure that safety is addressed, but have more of the pipeline. So I think that's a silver lining. Good things are happening is how I see things.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I want to kind of move on to the next part of our discussion today. How do you see AI transforming the landscape of drug discovery, development in a way that bridges the gap between patients and equitable access to medicine, particularly for underserved populations?
I can talk about the drug discovery,
Yes,
and then
I would love to hear from
I'll
you.
leave it to everybody, because I think everybody's using some form of AI and sort of bringing it to fruition. We are at the earliest stage of drug discovery.
Yeah.
So we are at the phase where you know that there's a certain protein in the body that is known to cause a disease or disorder. It's overactive or underactive, and you're trying to tune it. So we try to make binders to that process. Typically, that process can take a few years, depending on what technology you're using. And the promise of AI is, can you cut it to few months rather than years? And that way it becomes much cheaper. So you can send these ideas to the clinic. So there, I think AI is helping us design better molecules. Those who are skeptical would say, well, there's no AI-derived molecule in clinic yet, so let it get approved by FDA, and then we'll sort of go through it. And in some ways, it's true. Maybe it's going to be a few years, maybe 3 to 4 years before the first AI-derived proteins and others will start hitting. Maybe some of them are already hitting into clinical trials in different phases, small molecules for sure. So that trend is happening, so we think we are trying to compress it. Nobody has a holy grail, because that alone is not the gating factor. You can make a binder, but there are other properties to make a medicine. You should be able to manufacture it better. There are some properties. When you give it to the body, the immune system rejects it. Can you design a molecule beforehand that you know is not going to be rejected? That way you make it safe. That's a huge value, because then you can cut down the failures and the cost. You shouldn't find that out after you go to phase 1 clinical trial, right? Nobody has an answer to some of these, and there's a lot of impetus to do that. In fact, we too are having conversations on how do we get access to this data and integrate it with our models and so on. But those are the kind of impetus that's happening. So starting with one property and then slowly 2, 3, but it's not a linear change, it's going to be an exponential change. That's kind of how I see it. Love to hear more from, Olga and then Devki and Yves and, Heather.
Just maybe some addition, because we are going through maybe similar challenges right now in research or in R&D phase. When you don't have enough of data, like you just mentioned, you don't have enough of the modifications of molecules, for example, and stuff. So we are now exploring the new hot topic in AI, which is synthetic data and homomorphic encryption. My CTO would be laughing at me that I'm using these terms, but basically what is that like with the help of AI, or based on AI, you understand how to create the quality synthetic copies, keeping all the medical labels and the evolvement of the cells, for example, or biological. I'm not medical, sorry, expert, but basically you can
retain the privacy, you mean, of the person?
Not only the privacy, basically with the synthetic copy, you can try to generate missing puzzles, giving the things you want to see from the data set, or what you need to have in the data set to train the AI for the specific things. So that's pretty fresh research field so far. There are just, I think, a year or year and a half being done so far in the research field on the synthesization of the data in medical care or sector. But we see there the potential, because it would help to close those gaps of missing the data in order to fuel the research, in order to move forward with the clinical studies, for example.
Okay, so we're going to have to shorten our answers now. Going forward, we have a few more minutes left. I wanted to hear from you on this topic, and 2 more people, and then we're going to try and at least touch bases on the last 2 questions.
Yeah, I can give 2 examples of applications of AI. I was working with an eye doctor, actually in Saudi Arabia, who had developed an AI system to look at the eye and pictures of the eye. And from that, they can derive which kind of diseases you might have in diabetes and so on. And this eye doctor said that the system was trained, of course, on a lot of courses, but it can do it now better than an eye doctor. And why? Also because of simple fact, if as an eye doctor, you have to do that the whole day. At the end of the day, you're tired. You start making mistakes when you do that the whole day. So this is an example where in pattern recognition, AI is very good and can actually deliver better results than an eye doctor. With another example I have from Switzerland, company Roche. You know them, they have very good in therapeutics, but they also have a diagnostics company. And above those 2 companies, they are building a new layer to collect all the data from the analytics company, from the diagnostics company, and combine them with all the data from the therapeutic company. And then they have an enormous amount of data that they can collect, and then put an AI layer above that. So that's what Roche is doing, and Roche is actually the most advanced company in the world to do that. And maybe one last notice, actually in applications of AI, the healthcare industry is the industry where there are most applications of AI compared to all other sectors. And there's 2 reasons for that. First is enormous amount of data, and the second is big amount of money going around.
I'd just like to add from a data privacy and sharing point of view. So once the clinical trial has finished and then the drug is marketed for approval, within my area, we actually use AI to protect the patient privacy and the company confidential information, and we use the AI to pick up and flag up terms. But I don't think we're going to lose our jobs just yet, because the AI isn't quite as, quite far ahead as we would like. So we still need a human reviewer. So I find with AI, it hasn't quite answered all our problems just yet.
That's a great point. So I wanted to just go ahead and move on to the next question. Did you have something that you wanted to add to that?
I was just going to keep it short and sweet. It's
Sure.
just the time efficiency
Mhm.
and being able to cross-reference data points and do it at a much faster rate. And there's
Data points.
human error, right? And
Mhm.
so it should be able to navigate those data points very quickly.
Yeah, I think that, when it comes to AI, the only thing that I can say about is I do appreciate the deep dive, being able to do research faster. If I have a patient that is suffering with something that I did not know coming into the treatment with them, then I can do some deep research on that really quickly and get up to speed. So I think that could be a very useful tool, just from a very concrete level for us clinicians out there that really want to advance in practice and want, even though that may not be our specialty, but we want to at least know a little bit about it in case we have a client that is dealing with that we may even refer them out, but we still want to have some knowledge of that to intertwine that with their typical clinical treatment or psychotherapy that we might be working with them on. So one quick question: how can biotech startups ensure their breakthrough therapies remain financially viable while prioritizing equitable access in patient needs? So if anyone wants to start with that, or if they have something to, thank you, Olga.
Value-based healthcare. Just
What is-
one value-based healthcare. Just one sentence. It's
biotech
more in Europe, I
startups,
think. The term.
Biotech startups ensure their breakthrough therapies because, the biotech industry, there's so much breakthrough therapies that are going on. And we want to make sure that they're financially viable while prioritizing equitable access to patients. So we still want to look at the equitable access. Did you want to pick up on that?
I'll give a very brief, thought on that. I think biotech is where perhaps software was maybe 30 years back, 25 to 30 years back. I think there was a time when, with the infrastructures being built, there was a time for garage-based startups that actually could do something in a very short amount of time and actually make impact, whether it's Facebook and a bunch of other things. But the next Facebook or the Google is not going to be the next Facebook or Google. It's going to be biotech companies that now suddenly can do this. Now, what used to take scientists their whole career, and you could get awarded a Nobel Prize for maybe crystallizing a protein, you can do this in computer within the time that you finish your coffee or sip a tea. It just got the Nobel Prize recently. It's dramatically accelerated. So that means a high school student sitting in in their garage can actually reason about, with some basics, reason and think about, how do I create a medicine? This is the problem, and so on. That's not the whole place yet, but I think we are getting to. We already know there's a lot of targets for which we can be making drugs and so on. I think it's going to come to a point where it will be a garage-based startup, where there's going to be a lot more competition for trying to do these things. And then once you integrate some of these safety and other measures, and the regulatory gets better, it's going to sort of funnel more. Now, how fast the regulation moves and others, we do not know. That's something that's not in the control, but that's one way I think, you can still be profitable when you have low bar, a lot more competition, and then still have an equitable access potential.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Just
Thank
maybe to this value-based healthcare. So what I meant by that is that, at least in Europe, there is the concept that through the value-based deals for the government, you can ensure that the innovation, biotech or medtech, can reach the patients on the better financial terms, meaning that you make a deal that you provide this innovation to the patients, and the government, once seeing the result on the population, funds this further. So it's kind of a bit
That's
shortcut to.
Yeah. We need every bit of expertise we can get, because working in the field, you need to have that knowledge already on hand when you're in the real time moment. So did you have anything else to share? Let's go to the final question, just for sake of time. Would regulatory reforms like AI, sorry, this is kind of going out on me, clinical trial approvals or tiered pricing mandates help bridge the gap between patients and access? So can this be a way out, I guess you could say? So would regulatory reforms like AI-driven clinical trial approvals or tiered pricing mandates help bridge the gap between patients and access. So how can we use that? Is that possible? Did you want to start? Anyone?
Well, I can start. I'm a bit pessimistic on the regulatory front. I don't see FDA quickly making their approval schemes more easy, so I'm afraid that it still will take 10 years to develop a new drug. It may be a bit faster with AI, but not much, I believe. On the pricing, maybe there is some opportunity. What's happening is that people do voluntary licensing, for instance, to low-income countries, give drugs for neglected diseases for free, actually. So that's something that can help. But I'm a bit pessimistic on these things, actually.
Yes,
so I
yes.
believe more in the technological solutions.
I share Eve's pessimism, but I'm also optimistic that as there's more pressure from the patients, maybe the system will change. But yes, technology is something more in your control, and it has access to that phase one-ish clinical trial, and then after that, it's a bunch that's not in hand. So
Thank you so
hoping
much.
for the best.
I think we made our time now, unfortunately, but the only thing that I can say is tiered pricing does seem to be something that we should be able to explore more. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you for your time. And if you have any additional questions, we'll be mingling around. You can always come up to us and ask any one of us so we can go further with this topic. Thank you.